Hello everyone, I am Mae Gonzales from BSHM 1A and I am going to discuss the classical theory and Keynesian theory. So the first topic is classical theory. These are the key takeaways of classical theory. So key points. First, when classical theory emerged, society was undergoing many changes. The primary economic question involved how a society could be organized around a system in which every individual sought his own monetary gain. Second, classical economics focuses on the growth and the wealth of nations and promotes policies that create national economic expansion. So, ang classical economics kuno kay nag-focus sa paglago sa mga kayamanan sa atong nasod. O nag-promote lat og mga policies nga nagbuhat og national economic expansion, which is ang paglawak sa atong ekonomiya. So third is classical theory assumptions include the beliefs that markets self-regulate, prices are flexible for goods and wages. So supply creates its own demand, and there is equality between savings and investments. So ang classical theory assumptions ano dira naka-state nga ang mga tuo-tuo nga mag-market sa kuan anang self-regulate. Then ang mga presyo kay flexible ra. Then ang supply kay magbuhat ra og isa ka og galingon nga demand. And then ang aray equality sa pagkuan sa savings ug investments. So the key term is self-regulating, describing something capable of controlling itself. So classical theory was the first modern school of economic thought. It began in 1776 and ended around 1870 with the beginning of new classical economics. Notable classical economists include Adam Smith, Jean-Baptiste Say, David Ricardo, Thomas Malthus, and John Stuart Mill. So amo na sila ang nagmugna sa classical theory. So during the period in which classical theory emerged, society was undergoing many changes. So sa panahon nga ni usbong na ang classical theory, ang lipunan or ang society kay damo nay mga kabag-uhan. And then the primary economic question involved how a society could be organized around a system in which every individual sought his own monetary gain. So it was not possible for a society to grow as a unit unless its members were committed to working together. So dili posible para sa usa ka society nga moasenso unless ug naay mga members nga magtinabangay jud. So classical theory reoriented economics away from individual interest to national interest. So ang classical theory nag-reorient daw ni siya gikan sa mga individual nga interest then nahimo nga pang national na nga mga interest. So classical economics focuses on the growth and the wealth of nations and promotes policies that create national expansion. Just like what I said earlier, ang classical economics kuno kay nag-focus sa paglago sa mga kayamanan sa atong nasod. So nag-promote lat og mga policies nga nagbuhat og national economic expansion, which is ang paglawak sa atong ekonomiya. So during this time period, theorists developed the theory of value or price, which allowed for further analysis of markets and wealth. It analyzed and explained the price of goods and services in addition to the exchange value. So this is Adam Smith. Adam Smith was one of the individuals who helped establish classical economic theory. Adam Smith was an 18th century Scottish economist, philosopher, and author who is considered the father of modern economics. So, usa siya sa nitabang pag-establish sa classical economic theory. So, 18th century Scottish economist, ang philosopher o author sad ni siya. Din siya mao'y gitawag nga father of modern economics. So these are the classical theory assumptions. Classical theory was developed according to specific economic assumptions. So mao ni siya ang mga economic assumptions. So self-regulating markets. Classical theorists believe that free markets regulate themselves when they are free of any intervention. Adam Smith referred to the market's ability to self-regulate as the invisible hand, because markets move towards their natural equilibrium without outside intervention. So flexible prices. Classical economics assumes that prices are flexible for goods and wages. They also assume that money only affects price and wage levels. So supply creates its own demand. Based on Say's law, classical theorists believe that supply creates its own demand. So production will generate an income enough to purchase all of the output produced. So classical economics assumes that there will be a net saving or spending of cash or financial instruments. Equality of savings and investment. Classical theory assumes that flexible interest rates will always maintain equilibrium. So calculating real GDP, classical theorists determined that the real GDP can be calculated without knowing the money supply or inflation rate. So real and nominal variables. Classical economists stated that real and nominal variables can be analyzed separately. And now we are going to proceed with our second topic, which is the Keynesian theory. So Keynesian theory. Keynesian economics states that in the short run, economic output is substantially influenced by aggregate demand. This means that ang Keynesian economics kay even in a short period of time, ang economic output, which is ang value sa tanang sales sa goods and services, kay dako na daw na siya impluwensya sa aggregate demand, which is ang total quantity of goods. Okay, so learning objectives. At this time, we are going to differentiate Chicago School or Austrian School economist from Keynesian School economist. So these are the key takeaways of Keynesian theory. Key points. First is Keynesian theory was first introduced by British economist John Maynard Keynes in his book The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, which was published in 1936 during the Great Depression. So ang nagmugdaani kay ang British economist nga si John Maynard Keynes. So si John Maynard Keynes was one of the great intellectual innovators of the first half our century and certainly its greatest political economist. So ang Keynesian theory kay ato siya na introduce sa book nga The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money. So this book is Keynes' masterpiece and it was established right after the Great Depression, which means that Keynes' belief could not be explained by classical economic theory as he portrayed it in his book. So second is Keynesian theorists believe that aggregate demand is influenced by a series of factors and responds unexpectedly. So shifts in aggregate demand impact production, employment, and inflation in the economy. So ang Keynesian theories kinituo nga ang aggregate demand, which is ang total demand for goods and services kay na-impluwensyahan sa mga factors suddenly. So ang shifts sa aggregate demand kay naa siya impact sa pagkuan sa mga production, employment, o inflation, which is ang pag-increase sa price sa atua ekonomiya. Third is unemployment is the result of structural inadequacies within the economic system. It is not a product of laziness as believed previously. So we all know that unemployment occurs when someone is unwilling and able to work but does not have a paid job. So ang unemployment kay ang resulta sa kakuwangan gani sa mga ekstruktura sud sa ato economic system. So dili buot pasabot nga ang unemployment kay tungod sa pagkatapulan sa usa ka tawo. So for example, kay diba sa unang panahon kung wa kay trabaho or tambay rikaw kay ingno naman kag ay tapulan man na mao walay trabaho. So dili kay there are many causes of unemployment man good. So just like there is sa Philippines, ang reason sa unemployment is overpopulation, oversupply of labor force in certain industries, and inability to take on available jobs. So during a recession, the economy may not return naturally to full employment. So the government must step in and utilize government spending to stimulate economic growth. A lack of investment in goods and services causes the economy to operate below its potential output and growth rate. So overcoming an economic depression required economic stimulus, which could be achieved by cutting interest rates and increasing the level of government investment. So, K terms. Keynesian economics, a school of thought that is characterized by a belief in active government intervention in an economy and the use of monetary policy to promote growth and stability. So this is John Maynard Keynes. John Maynard Keynes was an early 20th century British economist, best known as the founder of Keynesian economics and the father of modern macroeconomics. The study of how economies, markets, and other systems that operate on a large scale behave. He introduced Keynesian theory in his book The General Theory of Employment, Interest, and Money. So as what I have said earlier, this book is Keynes' masterpiece and it was established right after the Great Depression, which means that Keynes believed could not be explained by classical economic theory as he portrayed it in his book. So it is considered one of the most influential economist books in history. So he advocates government intervention as a solution to high unemployment. So Keynesian theory. In economics, the Keynesian theory was first introduced by British economist John Maynard Keynes in his book The General Theory of Employment, Interest, and Money, which was published in 1936 during the Great Depression. So Keynesian economics states that in the short run, especially during recessions, economic output is substantially influenced by aggregate demand, the total spending in the economy. So according to Keynesian theory, aggregate demand does not necessarily equal the productive capacity of the economy. So Keynesian theorists believe that aggregate demand is influenced by a series of factors and responds unexpectedly. So the shift is aggregate demand impacts production, employment, and inflation in the economy. So na-explain naman din akong ganiha, so dili na lang na ako malikon. So economic thought. At the time that Keynesian theory was developed, mainstream economic thought believed that the economy existed in a state of general equilibrium. So the belief was that the economy naturally consumes whatever it produces because the act of producing creates enough income in the economy for that consumption to take place. So Keynesian theory has certain characteristic beliefs. So unemployment is the result of structural inadequacies within the economic system. It is not a product of laziness as believed previously. So para sa ako giingon kaganiha nga ang unemployment dili siya ingon nga tungod ni sa pagkatapulan sa usa ka tawo. So during a recession, the economy may not return naturally to full employment. So the government must step in and utilize government spending to stimulate economic growth. So sa panahon sa recession, ang ekonomiya kadili na siya natural gyud na mubalik ang imong trabaho. So ang gobyerno mo ay mahusog ana mo step in para pakusgon ang paglambo sa ato ang ekonomiya. So a lack of investment in goods and services causes the economy to operate below its potential output and growth rate. So an active stabilization policy is needed to reduce the amplitude of the business cycle. So Keynesian economists believe that aggregate demand for goods and services not meeting the supply was one of the most serious economic problems. And then ang excessive saving beyond investment is a serious problem that encourage recession and even depression. Also, overcoming an economic depression requires economic stimulus, which could be achieved by cutting interest rates and increasing the level of government investments. And the last one, cutting wages will not cure a recession. So, ang pag-iban sa sweldo, dili na makakure sa recession. So, schools of economic thought. It is important to understand the stances of the various school of economic thought. Although the beliefs of each school vary, all of the schools of economic thought have contributed to economic theories in some way. So, importante gyud nga masabtan o makahibaw ta nga mga nagkalain-lain nga school of economic thought. So, ang kanisad nga mga schools kin naka-contribute man pud ni sa economic theory. So, the Keynesian theory of economic thought emphasized the need for government intervention in order to stabilize and stimulate the economy during a recession or depression. So, in contrast, the Chicago School of Economic Thought focused price theory. So, rational expectations and free market policies with little government intervention. And then the Austrian School of Economic Thought focused on the belief that all economic phenomena are caused by the subjective choices of individuals. Unlike other schools, the Austrian school focused on the individual actions instead of society as a whole. So that will be all for my discussion. Hope you learned something about it. Thank you so much for listening and have a good day, everyone.